Sorry, having a few technical difficulties. Test, Julie? Okay. Yes. Can you hear me, Julie? I hope you can. Can you hear me? Okay. Good morning. Can you hear me, Julie? Okay.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Kate, and I'm delighted to be your worship associate this morning. Welcome to everyone taking part via electronic streaming from your home or wherever you may be. We acknowledge that our FirstU campus is located on traditional, unsurrendered, and unceded Algonquin and Anishinaabe territory, and that the work of reconciliation is a responsibility of our congregation and of all Canadians. Our goal is to educate ourselves and all who have ears to hear, to be of service to those who are at risk, and to advocate for justice. Do take care and take advantage of online opportunities at FirstU to stay in touch during this protracted pandemic. If you are new to FirstU and would like to learn more about us, please contact us through our email at welcome@firstunitarianottawa.ca. Following our service, please join us as well for our hospitality hour. You will find the Zoom link on our website at firstunitarian.ca or in our weekly email newsletter, the EUU. And now, here is Andrew from our board with announcements for today.
My name is Andrew Drake, and I'm proud to serve on the FirstU board. This past week, the COVID task force met and made some difficult recommendations, which the board executive approved. Our immediate concern was that FirstU events should not jeopardize congregants having a safe and healthy Christmas with their families or a small group of friends. We also wished to lead by example in our community in an effort to generally reduce infections and perhaps prevent an extended closure of schools. Public health wants us to avoid unnecessary crowds indoors. If we at FirstU can offer a similar experience in a significantly safer way, then we felt we should do so. And so all in-person worship services are canceled effective immediately and will be offered online only until further notice. Notably, this includes our Christmas Eve services, which will be reduced to a single online service available via YouTube. Other indoor use of the FirstU building is also canceled until further notice. Our Sunday services will continue to be published on our YouTube channel. There is one exception. Next week, Sunday, December 26th, will be available via Zoom to provide a break for staff and volunteers. We ask you for your patience at this unusual time. Our building closure is temporary, and we will reopen our doors once public health concerns are addressed. Online, we are as busy as ever. Check the EUU for religious exploration, book clubs, the poetry group, the spirituality and philosophy group, discussion circle, the mental health support and action group, the bridge group, trivia quiz, fair trade coffee and chocolate, and much, much more. Finally, the Environmental Action Group reminds you to send your letter to Santa before Christmas. No coal, think green, and to wrap your gifts in a sustainable way. Check the EUU or the Climate Action page for help. We wish you a safe and healthy holiday season.
So as Andrew said, stay with us online. It's as busy as ever, and that is where you'll find your services for the next little while. Today, we welcome you. Whatever your heritage, whatever your faith, whomever you love, and however you identify, today you are part of our spiritual community.
Bonjour, mes amis. And thank you, Kate and Andrew. Good morning, one and all. We are here together on this beautiful blue sky, white snow morning, the last Sunday of Advent, the last Sunday of autumn. I'm the Reverend Eric Meter, and I am honored to serve this community of faith. Yes, we're virtual once again. Sadly, this is the wisest course for now. We want to do what we can to help ensure everyone has a safe and healthy holiday season. Speaking of that, I am more than happy to announce that Santa Claus will be making an appearance at our virtual Christmas Eve service. If you would like your child or grandchild to receive a shout out from Santa, please send an email to Nail Yaxley, our DRE at firstunitarianottawa.ca. Tell us the name of your child and share a few things that your child likes to do and that make them special. We light our chalice this morning to these words, adapted from Lisa Day. Our ancestors got it right. The bonfires and the candles and the evergreen boughs, the libations and the songs and prayers, all these bring light, if not the sun itself, into the deep darkness of winter, the actual light of the fires and candles, and the spiritual light of hope and joy. Because though we cannot hasten the sun's return, we can bring the light. And so, as we light our chalice this morning, we do. And now our opening carol, one for this time of the season, the Coventry Carol, offered by Mariella and Jen.
Thank you very much for the lovely music. A call to worship. A blessing for traveling in the dark by Jan Richardson. Go slow if you can. Slower, more slowly still. Friendly, dark, or fearsome, this is no place to break your neck by rushing, by running, by crashing into what you cannot see. Then again, it's true. Different darks have different tasks. And if you have arrived here unawares, if you have come in peril or in pain, this might not be a place you should dawdle. I do not know what these shadows ask of you, what they might hold that means you good or ill. It's not for me to reckon whether you should linger or you should leave. But this is what I can ask for you, that in the darkness there be a blessing, that in the shadows there be a welcome, that in the night you be encompassed by the love that knows your name. Come, let us worship together. Reverend Ellen?
I'm Reverend Ellen Bell. I'm the spiritual care visitor for this congregation. At this time in the service, we accept people's personal joys and sorrows that people have sent in and asked to be recognized. We have a few this morning. The first is a stone of sorrow for our office Jen, whose mother-in-law died last night. Another stone of sorrow from a former member, Tony, who asked for a stone for his wife, Sharon. And he says, and these are his words, that she is nearing the end of her amazing life. COVID is still with us, and the Omicron variant is causing a lot of people to modify or completely change their plans for the holiday, which is causing some distress amongst people, but I don't think there's much we can do about it at the moment. But I continually urge people to be vigilant. And one last stone for all the joys and sorrows that are carried in our hearts. We will now have a moment of silence.
Good morning. I am Jody McIntosh, and I have the story for you this morning. It is The Rebirth of the Sun from Circle Round by Starhawk, Diane Baker, and Anne Hill. Circle round, and I'll tell you a story about when the sun was born again. It was the middle of winter, and the sun had grown very old. All year long, the sun had worked very hard, rising and setting day after day. All year long, the sun had fed everybody on earth, shining and shining, giving energy to the trees and the flowers and the grasses so they could grow and feed the animals and birds and insects and people. All year, the sun's gravity held tight to the spinning ball of the earth and the twirling ball of the moon and the 8 other whirling planets as they traveled around and around and around until the poor sun was dizzy watching it all. Now, the poor tired sun could barely make it up in the morning, and after a very short time needed to sleep again. So the days, they grew shorter, and the nights, they grew longer, until the day was so short it was hardly worth getting up for. Night felt sorry for the sun. "Come to my arms and rest, child," she said. "After all, I am your mother. You were born out of my darkness billions of years ago, and you will return to me when all things end. Let me cradle you now as I shelter every galaxy and star in the universe." So, Night wrapped her great arms around the sun, and the night was very long indeed. "Why does the dark go on so long?" asked children all over the world. "Won't the sun ever come back again?" "The sun is very tired," the old one said. "But maybe if you children say thank you for all the things the sun does for you, the light may return in the morning." The children sang songs to the sun. They thought about all the things the sun gave them. Now, listener, what do you think the children might have thanked the sun for? What would you thank the sun for? "Thank you for growing the lettuces and the corn and the rice and the wheat," they said. "Thank you for growing the trees of the forest and the seaweed and the oceans and the krill that feeds the whales. Thank you for stirring the air and making winds that bring the rain." Every time a child said thank you, the sun began to feel a little warmer, a little brighter. Wrapped safely in the arms of night, the sun grew younger and younger. At last, the children had to go to bed. "We will stay up and wait for the sun to rise again," the old one said. "Can't we stay up too?" the children asked. "You can try, but you will get too sleepy," the old one said. "But you can each light a candle, because all fire is a spark of the sun's fire. Put your candle in a very safe place and let it keep vigil for you as you sleep and dream of sunrise." So, the children lit their candles and put them in very safe places, and each flame was a little spark of the sun's fire. And the sun peeped out from between the arms of night and saw all the little fires and began to feel warmer and brighter and younger still. Early in the morning, the old ones woke the children. Together they climbed a high hill and faced to the east, the direction of sunrise. They sang songs to the sun and ran around trying to keep warm. They waited and they waited to see what dawn would bring. The sky began to turn from black to indigo to blue. Slowly the sky grew light. A golden glow crept over the horizon. Night opened the great arms, and in a burst of brightness, the sun appeared, new and strong and shining. For in the long night, the sun had rested well and grown young from the songs and the thanks of the children, young as a brand new baby born out of night once more. Everybody cheered, and the children jumped up and down. The sun returned! The sun is reborn! The people cried, and they danced and sang to celebrate the birth of a new day. And then they all went home for breakfast.
Thank you, Jody, for that inspiring and original story. I really enjoyed it. My reading is from Wintering, The Power of Rest and Retreat in Difficult Times by Catherine May. Everybody winters at one time or another. Some winter over and over again. Wintering is a season in the cold. It's a fallow period in life when you're cut off from the world. Perhaps it results from an illness or a life event such as a bereavement. Perhaps it comes from a humiliation or failure. Perhaps you're in a period of transition and have temporarily fallen between two worlds. Some winterings creep up slowly, accompanying the protracted death of a relationship, the gradual ratcheting up of caring responsibilities as our parents age, the drip, drip, drip of lost confidence. However it arrives, wintering is usually involuntary, lonely, and painful. Yet it's also inevitable. We like to imagine that it's possible for life to be one eternal summer. We dream of an equatorial habitat, forever close to the sun, an endless, unvarying high season. But life's not like that. Even if by some extraordinary stroke of self-control and good luck, we were able to keep control of our own health and happiness for an entire lifetime, we still couldn't avoid the winter. Our parents would age and die. Our friends would undertake minor acts of betrayal. The machinations of the world would eventually weigh against us. Somewhere along the line, we would screw up. Winter would quietly roll in. I learned to winter young. As one of the many girls of my age whose autism went undiagnosed, I spent a childhood out in the cold. At 17, I was hit with a bout of depression that immobilized me for months. But somewhere there, in the depths, I found the seed of a will to live, and its tenacity surprised me. Winter had blanked me, blasted me wide open. Yet, in all that whiteness, I saw the chance to make myself new again. I started to build a different kind of a person, one who didn't always do the right thing, but also one who deserved to be here, because she now had something to give. For years, I would tell anyone who would listen, I had a breakdown when I was 17. Most people were embarrassed to hear it, but some were grateful to find a shared thread in their story and mine. Either way, I felt with great certainty that we should talk about these things, and that I, having learned some strategies, should share them. I began to get a feel for my winterings, their length and breadth, their heft. I knew that they didn't last forever. I'm aware that I fly in the face of polite convention in doing this. The times when we fall out of sync with everyday life remain taboo. We're not raised to recognize wintering or to acknowledge its inevitability. Instead, we tend to see it as a humiliation, something that should be hidden from view. We put on a brave public face and grieve privately. We pretend not to see each other's pain. We treat each wintering as an embarrassing anomaly that should be hidden or ignored. This means we made a secret of an entirely ordinary process and have thereby given those who endure it a pariah status, forcing them to drop out of everyday life in order to conceal their failure. Yet we do this at a great cost. Wintering brings about some of the most profound and insightful moments of our human experience, and wisdom resides in those who have wintered. In our relentlessly busy contemporary world, we are forever trying to defer the onset of winter. We don't ever dare to feel its full bite, and we don't dare to show the way that it ravages us. An occasional sharp wintering would do us good, We must stop believing that these times in our lives are somehow silly, a failure of nerve, a lack of willpower. We must stop trying to ignore them or dispose of them. They are real, and they're asking something of us. We must learn to invite the winter in. We may never choose to winter, but we can choose how.
Thank you, Jen. Kate. What was it John Lennon reportedly said? Life's what happens when you're busy making other plans. That seems to be the way of the last week or two, doesn't it? Families that had looked forward to being together this Christmas are adapting to the new travel restrictions and social distancing guidance. We're presenting this worship service to a hearty few, this crew this morning, and we're talking to microphones and cameras. It's not the same. After Christmas Eve, via Zoom last year at the congregation I then served, I was so much looking forward to seeing at least some of your faces illuminated by candlelight while we sing Silent Night together this year. Maybe next year, hopefully next year, which is exactly what I said last year. I'm reminded of that traditional line that closes many diaspora Passover Seder meals. Next year in Jerusalem. Next year, Christmas Eve candlelight. At the cusp of the season, with winter solstice within reach, easy reach, we are realizing that any sense of a new normal is going to be a bit further off than we had hoped. And I find myself even more grateful for voices brave enough to talk about what winter season asks of us, a la the reading Kate offered from Catherine May a minute ago. What winter asks of us, both literally and metaphorically, symbolically. The bundling up, the snow shoveling, the slowing down, the taking stock, separating what will get us through this time from what is, at heart, extraneous. 5 years ago, this coming early February, I was in Vancouver, BC for a few days. While I had been to that city briefly twice before, I had never been downtown. So on a relatively bright morning, I set out to wander downtown, something I like to do in cities I don't know well. Walking along the sidewalks, seeing the shops, the cafes, the museums, watching folks during their winter, not too frenetic hustle and bustle as they went about what they were doing. And there, in the middle of it all, it seemed to me in the very center of that vibrant city was a public mall with a skating rink right in the middle. Folks of about every age were out skating, enjoying themselves. It was absolutely lovely. Now, I'm a lousy skater. I think I've mentioned that before, how a friend from Mexico City skated circles around me years ago, literally. And that, over 25, if not over 30 years ago now, was the last time I put on ice skates. But watching those skaters at the center of Vancouver reminded me of something a colleague emphasized about ice skating. A life lesson, if you will. Something we progressive liberal folks need to take perhaps more closely to heart. This colleague came to our faith tradition a little later in life. They came having learned the history and teachings of our revelatory faith, how we held and hold dogma at a distance and center our understandings based on the wisdom gained from long experience, personal, lived experience, more than written scripture from any age. Yet when my colleague first encountered our congregation, all she saw were people shuffling around like doozers from the children's television program Fraggle Rock. Now, my first wife, born in Toronto, a couple years younger than me, which puts her mid-50s, grew up on Fraggle Rock, so I know you have that in Ontario. Doozers are people with hard hats, and they just go around like this, and their feet are shuffling all the time. They're doing. They make terrible ice skaters. Because when you ice skate, you push and then you glide. But the people in our congregation reminded my colleague of doozers on ice skates. All they were doing was shuffling their feet. Where was the grace note? Where was the glide? Oh, drove her nuts. I love the image. When I drive myself nuts, I remember that I'm a doozer. I need to remember how it is to ice skate. Enjoying the glide is the grace note of skating. I'm a bad skater, but I know that at least. If all you're doing is shuffling your feet like this, you're exhausting yourself needlessly, joylessly. The gift of skating, the grace of life, is in the glide. But COVID's asking us to push a little more. And a sense of a big glide, well, we're not there yet. Who knows when we'll get there? If we'll get there, I think we will. So my first point for you today is to enjoy the little glides. As Jody closed our children's story earlier, it was time to go to breakfast. Breakfast can be a short glide. Enjoy it. This week I made pancakes for my wife. She liked them all right, but it wasn't until the second day, because we had plenty of leftover batter, that I added blueberries to them, and she said, "Oh, Eric, these are good." The blueberries were the glide. Don't short yourself. Add blueberries. Now back to this wintering we're still faced with. This week, Prime Minister Trudeau was quite frank in his assessment of the situation we find ourselves in, as was Ontario Premier Ford, who said, in effect, "We are all tired of this, but we still have work to do. We have to face the fact that any sense of normal is still some way a distance off." I think both summed it up well. We are tired of this. I am tired of this. Mediated worship services, masking. When I wanted to whisper in Ellen's ear, I got closer than I should have. Forgive me, Ellen. Hopefully we didn't give each other anything besides words of death in the larger congregation from this morning. Information I wanted Ellen to know that I learned just as I arrived this morning. But we can do this. We will do this. And now I have to ask you a question. At my start of my ministry with you, I said I was going to be asking questions, and this is one of them, although not one I was thinking of then. At the start of COVID, when I was still back in the country to the south, the States, I remember looking into the impact the flu epidemic in 1918 left in its wake, the flu that is still often called the Spanish flu, although Spain had nothing to do with it. It was just where we identified that the influenza really was serious. According to accounts in the States, at least 500,000 people died of the Spanish flu, and yet there was little to no lasting cultural impact. And I still hesitate when I say it, when I put it that way, because, well, I don't remember any. I don't remember learning or hearing about any. It still boggles my mind that there wouldn't be. Of course, our attention was riveted, understandably, by the First World War. And then in the States, Prohibition. And for those with the means, there was the Roaring Twenties, followed by the Great Depression. But what of what is still called the Spanish flu? Next to nothing in the cultural understanding. No plays, very few novels, none of great note. It was as if all of those 500,000 or more lives, all that lost, vanished into thin air, forgotten. I don't want that for what we're living through now. A phrase I heard on CBC radio as I drove in this morning, we're in the COVID years. I think it's good to have a name for this. It limits it. It makes me think there will be a time to come afterward. I need that perspective, that frame. I don't want all our sacrifices, the sacrifices of our hardworking, long-suffering healthcare workers, for example, to be for naught. I hope that we can learn something about what it is to separate what is extraneous from what is core during this time. Now, I may return to that phrase in the future. In the aftermath of the end of my first marriage, it was just interesting. I had an emotional, psychological catharsis, and then 2 weeks later, I got desperately ill. I think the anxiety that my body carried just manifest. I got some sort of food poisoning, and in 4 days I lost at least 10 pounds. I looked great afterward once the asheness had left my face. And that week taught me a lot about what was core and what was extraneous. So hearkening back to the reading Kate shared with us earlier, what winters have you endured during your life? What have you learned from them? And if you have been lucky enough not to have wintered yet, what might bring a winter of the soul to you You can use that language and interpret it any way you want. And in that imagination, how do you imagine yourself responding? Now, a quick online search in the last couple of days informed me that here in Canada, in February of 2018, at the 100th anniversary of the flu, actually months before, the Spanish flu was named a Canadian National Historic Event, and in September of 2019, a plaque was raised in Victoriaville, Quebec, northeast of Montreal, about halfway to Quebec City, in honor of the at least 50,000 Canadians who died of the influenza pandemic between 1918 and 1920. I'll need to study more to even begin to understand what impact the Spanish influenza had on Canadian culture and living memory. If you have ideas, thoughts, please let me know. I'll close now by we return to Catherine May a little later in her book Wintering, from where Kate shared with us earlier. Plants and animals don't fight winter. They don't pretend it's not happening and attempt to carry on living the same lives that they lived in the summer. They prepare. They adapt. They perform extraordinary acts of metamorphosis to get them through. Winter may be a time of withdrawing from the world, maximizing scant resources, carrying out acts of brutal efficiency, and vanishing from sight. But that's where the transformation occurs. Winter is not the death of the life cycle, but its crucible. Winter is not the death of the life cycle, but its crucible. It is up to us to determine how we will adapt and what we will learn, the wisdom we will carry forward from these, the COVID years. Thank you. Thank you.
few words to say about that one. That was the work of Canadian composer Don MacDonald, performed by Fusion. The text, the text was, "Come listen in the silence of the moment before rain comes down. There's a deep sigh in the quiet of the forest and the tall trees crown. Now hold me, will you take the time to hold me and embrace the chill? Or miss me, will you take the time to miss me when the earth stands still? Because there's no use running, the storm's still coming, and you've been running for so many years. Come listen in the silence of the moment before shadows fall. Feel the tremor of your heartbeat, matching heartbeat as we both dissolve. And so stay with me, held in my arms like branches of a tree. They'll shelter you for many years." And thought this text was particularly appropriate for today. Some of the things that we talked about it reminding us of in our rehearsals were facing difficult times or challenges together, particularly a couple or a relationship, taking time to value nature in relationship maybe to climate change, to enjoying the natural world around us, and the feeling actually at the beginning of the pandemic when things were suddenly stopped and life suddenly was still, the sort of forced stillness, which I think is again something that we're facing now. So thank you, Fusion, for that beautiful performance.
And thank you very much, Jen, for that. During the continuing pandemic, we rely on your generosity as much as ever. Whenever and wherever you are watching this, you are invited to go to our website or contact our finance manager to find out how you might keep up with your pledge or make a donation. Our gifts are freely given and gratefully received. We dedicate these gifts to the work of this community of faith, serving human wholeness, caring for the planet, upholding religious freedom, welcoming the stranger, loving one another. And now our closing hymn, the Manger Cradle Song. Mariella, will you tell us about this song?
Thank you, Kate. The Manger Cradle Song is a folk hymn from southern Appalachia, one of the poorest regions of the United States. When this song was written in the early 1900s, they would have identified with how Jesus was born in humble surroundings, just like them. So when you hear the line about how the evil people get to sleep on feathers, while the poor babies like Jesus must sleep in mangers, consider the ongoing class and social justice struggles we still live with today. Jesus, Jesus, rest your head. You has got a manger bed. All the evil folk on earth sleep on feathers at their birth. But Jesus, Jesus, rest your head. You has got a manger bed. Have you heard about our Jesus? Have you heard about his fate? How his mammy went to that stable on that Christmas Eve so late. Winds were blowing, cows were lowing, stars were glowing, glowing, glowing. Jesus, rest your head. You has got a manger bed. All the evil folk on earth sleep in feathers at their birth. But Jesus, Jesus, rest your head. You has got a manger bed. To that manger came then wise men, bringing gifts from hin and yon, for the mother and the father and the blessed little son. Milkmaids left their fields and flocks and sat beside the ass and the ox. Jesus, Jesus, rest your head. You has got a manger bed. All the evil folk on earth sleep on feathers at their birth. And Jesus, Jesus, rest your head. You has got a manger bed. Oh.
Thank you, Mary Ella. And now, as we prepare to extinguish our chalice this morning, let me leave you with these words by Leslie Takahashi. All that we have ever loved and all that we have ever been stands with us on the brink of all that we aspire to create: a deeper peace, a larger love, a more embracing hope, a deeper joy in this life we share. This morning's chalice is extinguished, but our connections and our faith remain. With that said, Jen, would you please bless us once again? And, this song is one that those in Worship Hall over the last couple months, we have been humming along to. But now where you are, if you know the words, you can sing along. Jen?
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea. Coule dans mes mains, vie d'espoir et de justice. Dis-moi, ciel, emporte-moi, source de vie, viens vers moi, viens vers moi.
Wherever you are, reach out to those who may be near you or not, but we are in this together. None of us is alone. Go in peace, go in love, go in joy, go remembering to bring blueberries. Enjoy the little glides wherever you may find them, and may all be well.